Tee Higgins could still make his way to New England, and we're going to break that down here on Patriots Today by Chat Sports. The latest rumor came out that the Bengals want to franchise tag Tee Higgins. Well, that could still happen, but what comes after that is really where the plan just starts to unravel. But also on this show, I don't want to put all my eggs in the Tee Higgins basket. I never have. So I want to talk about a possible backup plan the Patriots should possibly acquire in a trade for this wide receiver if they cannot land Tee Higgins in a possible trade or some other scenario later this year that could put him in a Patriots uniform. Before I do that, I do want to go on ahead and give a quick shout out to 5 of my recent subscribers. We have over 22,000 people here on this show, and you guys make us a huge community on YouTube. Dom the Bomb 828, Raw Nair, Richard Knight, Donald Meehan, Anthony as well. Thank you guys so much. These are their YouTube pictures, which I ended up putting in a nice little slideshow for you guys. If you want a shout out on Patriots Today by Chat Sports, you have to be one of these subscribers. Go on ahead and hit that sub button for me. The latest on Tee Higgins, he's the number 1 NFL free agent per PFF, but the Bengals are planning on franchise tagging him by March 4th. He's very familiar with this because he was franchise tagged last season. I hate that you can franchise tag a player in back-to-back years. I just think it completely puts a player at a disadvantage. But the reason why they franchise tagged him is because, or they want to franchise tag him, is because they do have hopes of reaching a long-term deal later this year, which would put him at roughly earning $26.5 million in 2025 with that franchise tag. But really, there's only 2 options that the Bengals can do. One, their plan works accordingly, and they franchise tag Tee Higgins, and then they sign him to a long-term contract extension later in July. However, it's going to cost a lot to keep Higgins, Burrow, and Jamar Chase, not even touching any of the other positions on the football field and making sure they get back to the playoffs. The other option, which could be very much in favor of the Patriots, the Bengals do end up franchise tagging Tee Higgins by March 4th, but they do not come to an agreement on a long-term contract extension. And then the last thing, we've seen this movie several different times. It doesn't end well. Either Tee Higgins demand a trade, he starts holding out, he doesn't want to play for Cincinnati, he feels like the franchise is doing him wrong by not extending him because maybe they can't get the money right. So it could lead Tee Higgins possibly being traded to the New England Patriots. Phil Perry with NBC Sports Boston says there are folks in the NFL who aren't sure that even though the reporting is the Bengals plan to use the franchise tag on Higgins, if they can't get a long-term deal done, which we just talked about, people are telling me they'll believe it when they see it. So my question for you guys here is, will Tee Higgins sign an extension with the Bengals? Do you think it's finally going to happen? They're going to listen to Joe Burrow, who pretty much already did the math for them, and actually sign Higgins to what he's worth with the Bengals. Type Y for yes, type N for no. I completely agree with Phil Perry. I'll believe it when I see it. If you franchise tag Tee Higgins and do not give him what he's looking for, there's no way that's going to end well for the 2 receivers, for Joe Burrow. And I do not see financially how they can pay 2 top wide receivers in the NFL and one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL with Joe Burrow and still have enough money to go get a good edge rusher or to go get a good cornerback or maybe a good left tackle. There are 11 guys on either side of the football the Bengals have to focus on, not just Jamar Chase, Tee Higgins, and Joe Burrow. And there is no secret that they need help at other positions. Guess what? So do the Patriots. But we have $130 million in cap space, and we have a hell of a lot of draft picks. The Bengals did not make it to the postseason this year, even with Higgins and Chase and Burrow, because they struggled at so many other areas on the field. If you really break it down here, they allow the 7th most points per game at 25.5 points. They were the 7th worst sack total with 36 total sacks. They ranked 29th overall in their offensive line per PFF. They had the 19th best defensive line by PFF. These stats are not going to get the Bengals back to the playoffs. There's no way that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Tee Higgins can put up 40 points if they can't not stop 40 points from getting on the board from their opponent. There are other factors. So it's going to come down to, can the franchise make Tee Higgins happy and also make the Bengals back to playoff contenders? That's going to be a lot of moving money around that I don't know if they can figure it out. And if they can't, I want to trade for Tee Higgins. And I know you guys do too. Should the Patriots trade for Tee Higgins if he becomes available? Type 5 for yes. Obviously, if they franchise tag him, looks like the free agency dream is out the window. They do still have until March 4th to franchise tag him. But could there be a trade? I want him. But like I've said, I will not put all of my eggs into one receiver's basket, especially a Tee Higgins basket. We did that last year with Calvin Ridley. We did that last year with Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and we were 0 for 3 on all of the receivers. There is still plenty of talent out there that I do think the Patriots should possibly try and go after and get, whether that's in a trade or in free agency, or hell, both. You need to improve in so many areas. Why not try and go get a good wide receiver like a Chris Olave from the New Orleans Saints? Should the Patriots trade for Chris Olave? Should this be a possible Tee Higgins backup plan? You can still go get Amari Cooper. You can still go possibly try and sign Stephon Diggs in free agency. But you could also maybe trade for another guy. Before I break down a little bit more about Chris Olave as a trade target, let me tell you guys about this sweet, sweet deal right now on Fanatics. You guys can get this using chatsports.com/PatriotsT. It's now $19.99. It's total price. That way you guys are going to get 50% off on your short shirt, $19.99 here on Fanatics. Use this link, chatsports.com/PatriotsT. As you guys can see, this performance tee can be worn in the gym. It can be worn out to the bar, can be worn out to Fenway, maybe even a Boston Bruins game. Doesn't matter. There are so many places in New England you guys can rock your Patriots shirt and nobody's going to look at you funny. So if you guys want to go ahead and snag this shirt for 50% off, be sure to use that link down below. I'm also going to comment it under this video in the comments down below. Go on ahead, click that link. It'll take you right to it. I know what you're thinking. There's no way Allie is comparing Chris Olave to Tee Higgins, and I am not. But I do think with the Saints, who just got a new head coach and a lot of new personnel, and they could be trying to completely rebuild their roster, maybe they wouldn't be opposed to taking some draft picks for a guy like Olave, that we can at least improve our wide receiver core. Not to the point of a Tee Higgins improvement, but like I said, you go out and still get a guy like Amari Cooper, trade for Chris Olave. You can start building it up piece by piece. And even the Athletic Chad Graff is going to break down a Chris Olave trade here, saying, my early guess is that the Patriots will aggressively pursue a trade. Could be an ambitious, as calling New Orleans about Chris Olave, or Seattle about DK Metcalf, which, once again, I've said this before, I'm not the biggest fan of DK Metcalf after he said he doesn't really want to play in New England. Or it might have to be settling for a deal with the Los Angeles Rams for Cooper Kupp. So knowing that DK doesn't want to play here, Cooper Kupp, way past his prime, Chris Olave could be a very obtainable wide receiver to trade for, especially if they're just looking for draft picks, because that's what the Patriots have a lot of. But when you have Chris Olave, you do have to take him with a little bit of grain of salt. Why? Because he just played his third year in the NFL, and it was kind of a half season. Concussions were his kryptonite, which is a very unfortunate truth for a couple of players in the NFL, but still, when he is healthy, and when he is playing, 44 targets on 32 receptions, 400 yards, touchdowns. Chris Olave is that type of go-route wide receiver. The concussion is a little bit nerve-wracking. That is something that can keep you out for a long period of time, and I don't play with concussions. Once you get hit in the head, I don't think you should come back. I think it's very serious. So knowing that he has an injury history of concussions does worry me a little bit. But Chris Olave, having very reliable hands, having insane speed, and he's a very good route runner. The only thing here is that I don't think he's the best blocker. I think that if you are going to use him in the wideout or the slot, you're either going to throw it to him or just know that's going to be a little bit more on the weak side. And I do still think that you will have to pair him with another receiver. I don't think Chris Olave, Demario Douglas, and Kendrick Bourne really make our wide receiver group that threatening. Now, if you add Stephon Diggs, you go out and get Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, somebody else in free agency, maybe even Cooper Kupp and Chris Olave just to add a little bit more veteranship to the core could be a little bit better. But I don't think this should be your only move. But it could be a costly one. Here is what a proposed trade online looked like. Chris Olave to New England, while the New Orleans Saints do receive 2 of our picks this year. Our second round pick, which is our 38th pick overall, which I was hoping New England would possibly use for an offensive tackle, and then they would drop down to the 4th round pick for New England. However, the Patriots still have the 4th pick overall, still have a high pick in the 3rd round. We still have 3 picks in the 7th round, 1 in the 5th. There are still other areas to snag some top talent, but you would give up a 2nd and a 4th. Would you guys take this trade? Do you think that Chris Olave is too injury prone? Do you think you haven't seen enough from Olave in his 3 years? Is this trade worth it? Type A for accept, type D for decline in the comment section down below. Like I said, I'm thankful for all 22,000 subscribers here. If you guys want to shout out, go on ahead, hit that sub button for me. Help us reach 23,000 subscribers. We're less than 300 away.